Over the years I've spent in journalism, I've collected enough strange stories to fill a TV series, The Correspondent Who's Always Stumbling into Trouble. Some of those stories were funny, some were frightening. But when it comes to anything genuinely unexplainable, I can really only think of one. Something a former soldier told me. I met him by accident at a sports and recreation center, where I'd come to get a quote from the facility's director about some thoroughly dull topic. The man barged into the office without knocking and got straight to the point. "Director, why are military pensioners only allowed in the pool before noon? Those are the rules. Subsidized hours are morning until lunch." The man coughed, frowned, and delivered his verdict. I wasn't kicking militant ass in Chechnya from 8 to 12. I was doing it day and night. He said it with such weight, such absolute conviction, that I would never have forgiven myself if my recorder had been on pause. I told the director I had no more questions and slipped out to catch up with the man. Back then, green as I was, he seemed like a real find. I was working at a shabby little paper at the time. The pay was terrible. The one upside was total creative freedom. I caught him near the exit, introduced myself, said I was with a paper. I asked whether he felt the facility was infringing on the rights of military pensioners, while quietly plotting how to steer the conversation toward his army days. "What's there to remember? I've spent years trying to forget, and you want me to remember?" He said it like a door slamming shut. I nearly gave up, but when we reached an ashtray outside and he discovered he'd left his cigarettes at home, I offered him one of mine, and he softened. That's when he told me about something that had stayed with him. Mikhail, that was his name, had served in the North Caucasus during the worst of it. He'd come through hellish fighting, seen things that would make your hair stand on end. But nothing, he said, had ever terrified him the way being stranded alone on enemy ground did. The truck Mikhail was riding in hadn't come under fire. It was just taking a detour around the dangerous areas. They chose the wrong road. The battered Kamaz drove straight into a bog at the edge of a forest and was swallowed in seconds. The driver didn't make it out. There were 4 men in the back. 3 of them went down with the truck. Only Mikhail got out. To this day, he can't say how. Maybe the impact simply threw him clear. He came to his senses, half submerged, the lower half of his body buried in mud, his hands clawing automatically at the soft ground. He couldn't pull himself out, just barely managing not to be dragged under. Fearful, he was already resigning himself to dying there when he heard something in the grass right beside his hand, a radio, hissing and crackling. Nervous, "Why aren't you answering? Come in. Hello, say something. Come on. Over." Mikhail grabbed it, hit the button, and snarled, angry, "I'm drowning in shit, asshole. A little busy." The voice on the other end responded immediately with precise instructions. "Forget you have legs. Relax them completely. Work with your arms. Drop the radio. Get yourself out." Mikhail took it as an order. He dropped the radio. It took everything he had, but he clawed his way out. He got to his feet, picked the radio back up, and keyed it. "Christ, thanks. I'd have been done for. Don't thank me yet. We still need to get you out of the rest of this mess. Where are you? Any landmarks? I'm alone. Nothing. Bog, forest, some hills ahead. Where are you? Far. But I know that area. Stay out of the forest. Head east. Someone will pick you up." How this sharp son of a bitch could know the area, let alone make contact from a distance, made no sense. There were bogs and forests and hills everywhere. But Mikhail decided not to argue. The voice said his name was Sergeant Kuznetsov. From the sound of him, a very young guy, but sharp, the kind of person you'd want to sit down and talk with. But there was no time for that. Any moment some bearded gunman could come out of those trees. Mikhail walked in the direction he'd been given. About half an hour later, the radio hissed back to life, shouting, "Stop! Watch where you're walking. You even looking at your feet." Mikhail froze and realized he really had stopped paying attention. He looked down, fearful. There in the grass, pulled taut just in front of him, was a thin fishing line. He'd nearly stepped right into it. He asked Kuznetsov how he knew. Kuznetsov brushed it off, said he guessed, and told him to keep moving. Hours passed before Mikhail finally reached a pale dirt road at the foot of a hill. "All right. Take care of yourself. Say hello to your mother." The radio gave one last crackle and went dead. A minute later, an Ural truck came barreling down the road in a cloud of dust. The men inside picked up an exhausted Mikhail. The whole ride, he rambled about the Kamaz going into the bog, about Kuznetsov saving his life, about the radio, and he kept shoving it in everyone's faces as proof. The soldiers just blinked at him and nodded. One of them took the radio from his hands, patted him on the shoulder, and said, "Whisper, all right, settle down." Mikhail woke up in a field hospital. The moment he opened his eyes, he started demanding to know why they'd brought a perfectly healthy man, not a scratch on him, to a place like this. As it turned out, they'd thought he'd lost his mind. They explained why his account of a miraculous rescue was hard to believe. He couldn't have been in contact with any Sergeant Kuznetsov. Fearful, not only was there no signal in that area, there was also the fact that Mikhail hadn't been carrying a radio. What he'd been showing everyone was a spent AK magazine with a bullet lodged in it, while telling them about the voice that had guided him to safety. Mikhail had always been a skeptic. He'd never believed in anything supernatural, but he couldn't make peace with the idea that he'd been saved by his own delirium. After his service, he dug through rosters and records, looking for answers. He never found any. There were plenty of Sergeant Kuznetsovs, among the living and among the dead. Maybe a young sergeant really did die out there once. Who knows? But Mikhail's own explanation is that his subconscious somehow made contact with him and pulled him through. One more thing, that spent magazine is now on display at the Museum of the Sofrino Brigade. At some point, I went to see it for myself. The guy didn't know the story behind it. Sad, he just introduced it as a trophy from Chechnya.